advisory and administrative boards such as yourself. Sometimes we invite former city council members and former members to play, and every once in a while we'll let a current candidate for council play as well. So we have 8 little rules of this game. We're going to go over all of them before we play. Disclosure of conflicts of interest, all the way down to campaign activity. So conflicts of interest, this is a special economic benefit. So there are 2 things you have to keep in mind: business entity, the rule of 1015, and the real property rule 25. So you have a conflict of interest in a business entity if 10% or more of the voting stock is owned by you, a family member or a relative, or 15,000 of the fair market value. Real property rule of 25, which is actually 2,500. So you have a conflict of interest if you own 2,500 or more of the fair market value of the real property. And as I like to say, you're going to realize that some of these don't apply to you in your capacity on the Animal Advisory Board, but I have no idea what your future aspirations might be. If you want to be on a different board for your city council, please look up. I want to give you a preview of what the rules might be. So you've determined you have a conflict of interest. You have that 10, 15, or the 2,500. So what you do is file a conflict disclosure statement with the city secretary's office by 5 p.m. within 7 days. Determining that you have a conflict, you have to abstain and you have to walk out of the room. Do y'all remember why I asked you to walk out of the room? Because you might have baseball signs, you might be tipping somebody off in the room as to how to vote. We don't want anybody in the public to think you're actually doing that. So relationship with the vendor, this is when you get to brag about who you're related to. So you get to brag if a vendor on the agenda, which is typically not your board, said for a your city council, if you receive taxable income of 2,500 or more from that vendor, or your family member, your spouse, your child, your grandparents, your aunt or uncle, or if you're related to them within the 3rd or 2nd degree. So this is the time of year when you get to brag about getting gifts. I have yet to be bribed, but it's almost 30 years and I'm hopeful there's still time. Thanksgiving is coming up. Somebody might want to give you a nice little gift basket, turkey, food, that sort of thing, invite you to dinner. So you must disclose or brag. If you get lodging or transportation or entertainment from all these people, keep in mind, I call it bragging. Fort Bend District Attorney's Office call it bribing. So food has a little asterisk. So if you get that gift basket and everything else, it cannot exceed $100 because you're not having a conversation with the vendor. However, if you are sitting there at the table, having the meal with the vendor, and you have to listen to their conversation, their pitch or whatever, for your pain and suffering, you can get up to $500 because you're receiving it as a guest. And then go ahead and order that dessert with that doggy bag, take it home. If you decide not to disclose these, guess what? You get to go hang out with the fine folks at the bed and breakfast in the county, wear orange and have your food cooked to you by your roommates. Additional rules, doing business with the city. So this only applies to city council members. You cannot have a substantial contract with the city. What is a substantial contract? It's $1,000 or more. Note, mine, this is not annually. This is for your full duration. So you've got 3 years if you're a short timer, or up to 9 if you go all the way through all 3 terms. Representations and appearances. So this is great. If you decide you want to put a letter to the editor, post on Facebook, Nextdoor, whatsoever, you have to tell everybody which hat you're wearing. As an Animal Advisory Board member, my opinion is this. As a resident of the city of Sugar Land, my opinion is this. It's just important that you say which hat you're wearing because people need to know. As far as representations and appearances, that also applies if you go in front of another board. So you can't go in front of the city council and say, as an Animal Advisory Board member today and tomorrow as president, we asked you to determine which hat you're wearing when you're standing in front of them. Use and disclosure of official information. In the unlikely event this board gets sued, you get to have the privilege of going into the council dining room with me and we're going to have a little pep talk. I call it pep talk. Some people call it legal advice. So any legal advice or pep talk I give you in that council dining room is confidential and you cannot disclose it under state law or the code of ethics. Procurement. So this doesn't apply to you, but once again, I don't know what your aspirations might be. Participation procurement means you cannot influence a vendor. You cannot provide insider information. You cannot have a special deal behind that saying, hey, if you vote, I'll approve your contract if you'll give me this. So under the state law and under our purchasing requirements, if we find out that an employee or a board member has had that conversation, we disqualify that vendor. They can't do business with us because we want to be on the up and up. And campaign contributions, this is the last and final one before we get to play our little game. This says that you cannot receive $25,000 or more on a campaign contribution from somebody who is suing the city for $50,000 or more. We don't want that person to be able to have the appearance of buying a verdict or a settlement with the city. So I went through that extremely fast. And I've done this several times. I know y'all have all sat through it and y'all are kind of ready to get on the good stuff. But if you happen to not be able to sleep tonight and want to read the full copy, here it is in front of you, chapter 2. And if you have any questions, you're also able to ask me. I can write you a written opinion on the ethics code. This is also called a get out of jail free card. So if you give me the facts of what you plan on doing, and I say, yeah, that looks like a great idea. I think you're fine. Turns out I'm wrong. Guess what? I'm in trouble, not you. So if you determine somebody doesn't follow the rules, what do you have to do? Or what do you get to do? You get to file a written complaint. File it with the city secretary's office. It must be done within 1 year of determining a violation has occurred. And it must be signed and sworn, and you must list the name of the person who you believe violated the code and the code section that you think they violated. Any additional facts to help us investigate would be great. There's a form on the city's website that's really easy to fill in the box, and you can even click the code section right then and there. You don't have to remember it because I did go through it fast, but you do know where to find it in chapter 2. So once it's gone through there, the city secretary sends it to me and I look at it and go, yep, it's signed and sworn. Yep, this person is a member of the Animal Advisory Board, member of City Council for the 4A plan and zoning. And then this person is something that, the complaint is something subject to the code. Once it gets past me, the Independent Ethics Review Board gets to look at it and determine whether a violation has occurred. And if they determine one has occurred, sanctions will be issued. Well, the sanctions you can read 1 through 7. Number 1, letter of notification. It's basically a shake your finger in writing letter, all the way down to the very bottom, number 7. Now, because you have to, council members are elected into office, the only way to get them out is to have a recall. This board cannot remove them. So that was fast. Do you have any questions? Or are you ready to play? All right, here we go. So we're playing Cards Against Ethics. So the purpose of the Code of Ethical Conduct is, and this is where you participate.
Establish standards of ethical conduct. Those candidates and those who do business with us.
And the purpose of the personal code of ethical behavior include blank and blank. You receive a blank valued at over $100 from a city vendor, you must. So which one are you choosing? Are we picking the llamas or cruise? I have a running tally. The cruise, all right. So only 1 port in the last 3 years has picked llamas. Confidential information obtained during a blank can blank.
Both executive session, not to be used for your own personal benefit.
And if you would financially benefit from a contract in which the city is considering purchasing blank, you should blank. I appreciate your participation, but they don't get points for that.
No, I'm just saying from us, like that would be.
Sure, okay, but yes, the board has to answer to get participatory credit for doing this training every year.
Be waiving inflatable demand and file a conflict of interest form.
If they relatively receive a financial benefit from an item on an agenda for consideration, you should blank and blank.
Valid conflict of interest.
You have to abstain from voting on an agenda item, you should blank and then blank.
Leave the room and wait outside until it's finished.
And then wait outside until it's finished. Yep.
Okay, if your friend asks you to use your position on this board to get them blank, you must blank.
Decline the request. Decline the request.
And to file an ethics complaint, a blank must be blank.
Signed and sworn allegation filed with the city secretary.
Congratulations, you're good for another year.
I think that's the quickest one yet, Meredith. It was like our oath of office.
All right. Item 5, workshop for this meeting would be a review and discussion of the new animal shelter facility and the general bond results.
I'll hold that until Dawn gets the next item and come back.
All right, let's move on to item B, which is a review of and discussion of the animal shelter and community engagement program updates. Ray, would you, address that, please?
Should have been some other slides.
I don't know where to start.
Yeah. Yeah, keep going back. Should have. There we go. So I'm gonna try to give you as much facts as I can. I know there's gonna be some questions you probably have. I'll try my best to answer them. If I don't have the answer, I'll get it for you and then I'll bring it back. Okay. But these are the topics that I'm gonna go over and give you some information on. So shelter staffing, currently we have 5 vacancies. That's the animal service manager, kennel techs are fully staffed. We do have the veterinarian technician, full-time vacancy available, engagement coordinator, and 2 animal service officers. Now that's current. We do have the animal service manager and the animal service officer positions posted. We have plenty of applicants that have applied already. This week and next week, I'm supposed to be sitting down, looking at them and trying to go through setting preliminary interviews and then going through the interview process for hiring them. Tiger team's here. Thanks for being here. We're all working on trying to get the rest of them posted very, very soon. I know engagement coordinator is very, very high on the priority list, but back end works a little bit different. We gotta go through a bunch of steps to create the posting and then get it approved and then get it posted online. So that stuff is coming. So training that have happened and everything that I'm giving you is going to be for September and October timeline. So September, we had disease control webinar. From my understanding, all the staff went through that except for, no, all the staff went through that one. The dog behavior webinar, all kennel techs except, so we had 4 of the kennel techs take that class. So we still have a few more that need to go through that. And then Yenny went through the Best Friends Summit during September. And she'll give a little bit of update on that one. All up for the community engagement portion, but we did not have any trainings that occurred in October. So medical updates, we're talking about ringworms here. September, we had 29 that were still in treatment. The number went up in October, but most of the animals that came in during October or that were accounted for in October were already being treated. That's a lengthy process to go through the treatment of full ringworm. And currently, as of today, we have 9 that are in ringworm treatment isolation. So, and that number is supposed to drop off to 0 within the next week. So we're doing phenomenal on treatment and containing the ringworm spread, and Jean is doing a phenomenal job. She's like that. So heartworm treatment, this was a little hard to find. I know that past management had kept track of the positive ringworm treatments in-house on a separate folder in our care drive. It took a little time to find this. However, what I could pull is that we had 4 dogs that tested positive that started treatment within the time frame of September and October. And then and it's ongoing treatment as well. We have 6 that are currently undergoing, which is part of that 4 as well. So our mobile vet unit. So Dr. Bender has been part of, I think we had this for 2 months, a month, contract with you, yep, so. We haven't needed to use her services in October, so this, if you don't know, we have Dr. Bender on standby to come and do mass spay and neuters for us when we get lots of animals in a short amount of time. And it's just more cost efficient when we have her come in and do 24. Then what's the cap on it? 30?
30.
So up to 30 animals, she'll come in and for a set rate of $1,500. So in September, on September 7th, she did 24 dogs, 3 cats. Much appreciated. But since that point, we haven't had any mass amount of animals come in within a week period. So we've been able to use our regular contracts for the animals that are coming in. So nothing that exceeded $1,500 where we would be better suited to use her services. So nothing came in October for that as well. Field officer activity. So we have 3 different categories here. The release to owners in the field by our animal service officers for September and October. 7 for October and 11, I'm sorry, 7 for September and 11 for October. They are extremely busy. I did have the bite cases in here for September. There was 10. October stayed pretty steady. Now that's humans being bit by dogs. And then what I really wanted to focus here on is the activity. So something that I came in and started asking the ASOs to do, or animal service officers to do, is to track not only the calls that they're going out to these residents and dealing with stray animals or dog bites, but to also keep track of all the phone calls that they're answering as well. Those may take 5 minutes, they may take 20 minutes, but that started in September. So anytime we get somebody calling 311 asking for animal service officer and requesting information, an animal service officer has to respond. They'll give them a call back and get them situated with whatever information they need, whether that's them going out or just a phone call with resources. So they did start in September. That number was a little bit lower, which was 71. And in the month of October, it had a little bit more activity when I ran this report because of that. But that's showing that they're not just sitting down in the office doing nothing or driving around doing nothing. They're constantly working there. So 94 calls total between the 3. So that's Mike, our animal service supervisor, and then the 2 animal service officers. So population, and again, this is, I ran these numbers on November 3rd. So this is about a week old, but still current. In the shelter, we had 21 dogs, 2 of them, and 2 that are not in the 21 were out at foster homes. And then for the cats, we had 51 in the shelter and then 5 in foster homes, and then 8 that were on sleepovers. So the numbers are going down. We had some significant, I think, significant adoption rate in September, October, end of September. So staff has been working really hard. And I'll get to the best friends report. I think all of y'all have got an email copy of that. Community care, community cat program. We had 7 registered caretakers with 62 cats or kittens and overall in the program. And then we had 12 that were caught and released through the program. So that's them, the caretakers picking up cats in their areas, taking them to go get spayed or neutered, and then they're vaccinated and then released back to their area. So this is going to be the best friends report. It just broken down, and I pulled the numbers and put it on here. A little bit easier to read off, but for September, the save rate for the cats was 91%. Dog save rate was 100% for September and October. The cat save rate went down in October, but we did have less brought in. And we did have more that were that left on a live outcome. I believe that number is just 88% because we had less brought in. That's all like a formula based. Our microchip program has been doing really well. I pulled numbers or got a report created, is not really tracked, in my opinion, wasn't tracked right over the previous months. We didn't have a real hard number to look at. It was more just kind of counting best we could, best number of events that were happening, and we have a system, Chameleon, that tracks all that stuff, but we didn't have a report generated to pull that data out. I was able to get with Chameleon and get that information, so we have 100% accuracy when we're putting this PowerPoint together. But for September, we had 53 microchips that were utilized, and in October, that number went up to 68. So we're doing really, really well with microchip in the community. All right, so we're gonna go to the community engagement. I'm gonna turn it over to Yanish. This is her part. If you can come up. I figure I'd let the person that did the most work on it talk about it. So. Do you want me to put the button?
He's a great man away.
So been keeping myself a little busy for the past couple months and everything. So we do had a few events going on. At the end of September, we participated in Clear the Shelter. And that was the last big promo Jillian did for us. She went to KPRC with Kelly, promoted the shelter, get her a little more highlights and everything for her and everything. So up to date, Kelly has been adopted. So she's no longer with us. She's in a good home with a family that has no dogs. And apparently she's doing very well there. So we're happy for her. Then also September was the end of Rent a Dog, which is something that we participated at Constellation Field with Hollywood Feed. We were there tried to be there at least once a month and everything, get more eyes on the shelter. Turns out that a lot of people didn't know Sugar Land had a animal shelter, which was a big eye opener for me, which is something that I clearly want to change for our city. We want to get more eyes in the shelter, more eyes on the dogs, and more eyes on our staff and everybody. And then we participated in a parking day event, and our theme was Home Sweet Home. So I went out with Kayla and Sandra, and we actually won first prize on that. So yay for us. So we ended up taking two of our dogs, Starlight and Scrappy, which now is named Suze. So both of them also have been adopted. For Suze, we ended up doing a DNA test to figure out what kind of breed he was. And we, turns out he's a King Corso with a boxer. Yeah, so, yeah, he's double the size right now. So if you met him, he was a small little puppy. Small. Now he's double the size. He's in a good home now. The same thing with Starlight. Somebody came to the shelter, fell in love with her, and did everything that they could to come and get her, and they did, and happy home for her. So. And we also participated at the Kendra Scott Shine Bright Do Good fundraiser adoption event. So this event was basically just also to put eyes on the shelter. So they wanted to do a fundraiser for us. 20% of the proceeds for that day went back to the shelter. So which it was a good outcome. A lot of people participated in that. So that was a pretty nice event. Sandra did that event because I was at a different event. So Sandra and Kayla, good job on that. And that same day, I was at the Best Friends Houston Regional Summit. It was at the Galleria. I was there with other different shelters and different other rescues to find partnerships and everything, bounce ideas from each other, which actually turns out pretty good, educational and everything. So that was a good summit. And then also we participated this year, it was a big one. Rafe shut down the shelter to let the whole staff participate in that. So it was a big event for us. We participated at the Health and Wellness Expo. That's Kayla and Shayna. Shayna's actually on a sleepover right now, so. And then also we did a meet and greet with the volunteers. So basically for all the volunteers to get to know the Tiger team, get to know Rafe. And that's Rafe right there in front of everybody. And then also we did our Yappy Hour market trip events. That was a huge success. We had over, I think we did how many? 30,
Yeah, just in that one, I think it was like 33 or something like that.
30 market trips of it. Yeah, so Jean did all of them and everything. So good job, Jean. And that's great too. And then I did an event at the Kids Are Kids Fall Fest. That was a pretty good event. We ended up taking Tom Benjamin and Shayna. Turns out that Tom loves kids. He loves them, he sees them, he starts wagging his tail and everything, so that was pretty good. And then also I participated at another summit with Best Friends at Austin. So I was gone for a few days. That was also a big successful event, partnership with a few more transfers, rescues, and shelters too, not here, but in Austin too. I know in the past we've done some transfers out to Austin, so got more connections there too.
So on she talked about 2 summits, and I want to make sure that I say this. We do my goal is to send as many people as we can to trainings like this. And we've already had a sit-down conversation about one of them as she came back, and she wrote a brief on what she learned while she was there. So that way I could take what we can and apply it across the board. So it's not just one person going and getting the information, but actually bringing it back and we learn from it so we can continue to grow and do better. So, and that's with anybody that goes to trainings like this, but Kenny's already given me a brief on one of them, but continuing to do that so we can grow.
And then the last big event that we have for October was the Halloween adoption event, which was also a big success. So we partnered with Brian White. He sponsored all the dogs and all the cats for that day. All the animals that got adopted, he paid all the adoption fees. So that was a huge success. The biggest success from that event was Gomez got adopted that day. So Gomez was another dog that was long-term, just like Bogart was. So huge success. He was in a foster home and he actually got adopted that day. So we were doing everything that we could for Gomez. And finally, he made the decision to go ahead and finalize the adoption paperwork that day. So we did a few adoption sleepovers and everything. Brian White still sponsoring some of those animals with us. He's gonna continue doing that for us and everything, which is a huge plus for us. Because not only is he doing the sponsor, he also promotes them on his website, so.
And we have a dog named after him.
We do. And he's actually pet of the week this week, so. So the next big event that we have is this Saturday, November 16, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We're gonna be partnering up with Forbin County and Rosenberg. So that's another huge success that we always have there. At the fairgrounds, we're gonna take as many dogs as possible. We're probably gonna take all of our cats that we can for that event. So we're hoping some of the animals that we take get good homes. So
We will be closed that day, by the way. And that's because we're putting all of our eggs in the basket that we're gonna get as many as we can adopted. We're gonna need all the staff we have that are working that day to attend this event. And hopefully we get more adopted there than if we would stay open.
So we're still doing out more pleads for fosters, especially for our doggy day out. I was at a event this past Saturday and a lot of people were wanting to do the volunteer program. I did talk to a lot of people about the doggy day out, which is something that our dogs get good outcomes from that, gets more eyes on them, especially if we take them out to If you take them out to TJ Maxx, Marshalls, wherever you wanna go. Like I tell people, you don't have to take them out for a full day. It could be for an hour. You could just go grab a cup of coffee and something like that, just grab them one and they'll love it. That's all they care. As long as they get out from the shelter, it's a plus for them and it's also a plus for whoever takes them out to get more eyes. So I still want more people to get involved, especially with the doggy day out. So if you ever want to take a dog out, just let me know.
Got any questions for you, myself?
Well, I guess this would go to Dawn too. I don't think either of y'all happened to work at the city the last time. The last time the animal shelter manager position was advertised externally. We work as a board, were consulted on what we thought were important characteristics and qualifications for the candidate. And we also actually had a couple of representatives that met with the final candidates. And we got to give our opinion on the hiring, what we thought of the final candidates. So I was wondering if you guys could talk and get back to us on what we can offer our involvement again, to find out what, how we can help this time.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to talking with,
I'm gonna have to interrupt you. The item that's posted is community updates. It's not posted for any employment or positions. So we would have to post that on a future agenda to have that discussion. So, thank you.
anybody have anything else on the updates?
Good job.
Being kind, I appreciate it.
Now, before we get to the director's report, does anyone know if Dawn Stuff is going to attend the meeting?
Yeah, she said she would be a few minutes late, but she is
Yeah.
planning to 40 minutes or so.
Uh,
We haven't heard
I
any
could-
different though, but that was
should we
last we
proceed
checked.
to the director's report.
I need some.
All right, Red, are you able to do the director's report now?
I'm gonna have actually Jennifer come up and talk about, help me out with the director's report. And do you feel comfortable going over?
Yeah, I could go over the bond stuff. If that's,
Yeah, Dawn did say she was gonna make it at the end.
Yeah.
She might, and I need to get another message from her, so I'm gonna,
call her. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna assume that she's not able to make it.
And yeah, the director's report's really short. Just wanted to give you guys an update on the donations fund. This is unaudited numbers. So we budgeted, budget balance at the beginning of last year, about $174,000. We had estimated 19,000 in revenue. We brought in 46,000, including 11,000 in grants, 25,000 in donations, and almost or a little over 9,000 in interest income. Jojo, you're okay. I knew she was gonna get upset. She can't see me. Maybe if I stand over here.
But yeah, I'll push the button for you too.
I'm okay. All right. On the expenditure side, we initially had 90,000.
Where did the grant revenue come from?
That was from Best Friends.
Best friends, okay.
Yeah, it was two separate grants. One was for the TNR program. And then we got another $1,000 for just for participating in that June event. Where we had like the adoption event, we did some promotions and things like that, and they gave us $1,000 for it. It's like, okay. And so we just have been putting all of the grant money that we've received into this fund. So we originally had budgeted 90,000 in expenditures, not knowing like what the plan was going into this, and that was my first year doing the budget for this fund. At the end, we reduced that to 39,000 for projections, because it didn't look like we were gonna spend nearly all of that. So we ended up spending just under 30,000. So our projected ending balance is a little over $190,000 for fiscal year 24. Okay. Any questions on this?
Just to confirm, we used to have a committee on the board, a donation committee. And then under the last regime, somehow it was decided that we didn't need that committee. And I'm just wondering, I don't know, I guess, I don't know what the oversight is. Will there be a donations committee again? How is it determined how the money is spent?
So we have a policy that, governs how we spend these funds. And that is an interdepartmental policy. It is, overseen by, management, by the director and the ACM, that oversee the shelter. And, basically it could be used for things that it's not covering things that the general fund dollars should be paying for. So it's not day-to-day operations. It's things like, sending Betty to Grey Wolf and, having the assessment, that person, Christine.
I believe so.
Martine,
Martine,
yes,
yeah.
thank you. I was like, yeah, it starts with teen, I can't remember, it ends with teen. Having her come in and do the assessments, things like that. It's, you know, buying the backdrop and the tablecloth and the promotional materials and things like that. So that's what these funds are being used for, because that's the general fund dollars are not available to cover that. So it's not paying for routine veterinary stuff.
Were you talking about the committee that was established to help with getting donations in?
Not the fundraising committee.
Okay.
Yeah,
There
was a
used to be
donations
a committee specifically for this donation fund, which
I don't know if that committee ever did anything.
I don't think they
And that's why we decided to eliminate it, because it just didn't. We have a process for internally, within the city management structure for.
So the assistant city manager.
Yeah, and so it's all decided like during the budget process or when things come up, it's just run up the chain to say, hey, can we use donations for this?
Okay.
So that's why we ended up eliminating the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Then for next year, so we're gonna take that 190,000, that's gonna be our starting point. We've estimated 20,000 in donations based on bringing 25,000 in this year. We're already at 4,000, and just through October, so we are well on track. For that, and then based on last year's interest income, we estimated 9,000 in interest income, and we earned 771 in the month of October. Jojo, you're okay. And then, so on the expenditure side, we have estimated 56,000 to give us a little bit more room, not going back up to 90. But you know, assuming that we would spend a little bit more than the 30 that we spent this year. So even if we do all that, we'll still end with 163,000 this year. And then, so right now, we're standing at 192,000. Based on, we have 25,000, I think, in a contract right now. And so that's all we've done so far. And I don't even know what, Sandra, do you know what that 2,500 was for? In the donations, there was a contract for professional services. I didn't look to see.
I was advertising it first column.
No, for out of 25.
Oh, for 25, I hadn't made one for 25.
Okay, it may be a rollover then, and it may go away. Yeah, I'm not aware that we've done anything yet with these funds. And, yeah,
So for the future meetings, as long as nobody has any changes, these are all the Mondays that I think everybody agreed to prior to on this last meeting. For January 13th, March 10th, and then May 12th.
you can reach on, so we can go ahead and. Go back. I think between you and me, we can cover the election.
I'm just gonna do my best to read off the information for you. Nothing like being on the spot.
Right,
Did not like that.
If not,
right, you wanna make a phone call and see if we can?
I think we already did, yeah, we.
I can't safe to say she's not coming.
All right, well, if you're not prepared to speak to this, I guess we can postpone it to the next.
I think that between me and Jennifer has a lot of knowledge on this topic as well, so she can pretty much fill in the.
All right, well, let's proceed then and do the best we can.
Go want to go ahead and introduce the item?
Did you want to introduce the item?
Introduce the item.
The item is item 5A, a review of and discussion on a new animal shelter facility and the GO bond receipts.
So, given that we had the election last week, you all know, are aware that unofficial results show that Proposition E passed with success. So that project, that gives us a project budget estimate of 21 million, including $1 million for inflation. So the last estimate we got on the cost was right around 20 million for the shelter. And so the plan is that we will begin design after the first of the year. And that design will take about a year to complete. And then once we have that design completed, then we will bid the project, and we estimate construction will take 18 to 24 months. Little reminder, we had Animal Arts come in earlier this year, met with staff, looked at our needs and estimated the growth in population that we're seeing in the county, including the annexation of Greatwood and New Territory. And also included the 2022 change in industry standards for dog housing. And so with all of that, we have an estimated housing needs of 80 dogs and 122 cats. And the shelter would be approximately 26,000 square feet. And that is about 23,000 square feet of indoor and 3,000 of outdoor covered space. And we have not finalized the location yet, but one alternative is the Imperial Park site, right there at 90, the wooded area. So we have on the fundraising campaign, we need to relaunch that campaign and get going now that the election has been approved. We have 135,000 out of 2.4 million that we've raised to date. I actually think it's 141,000. I think that was the number I had in the slide last time. So anyway, we have a long ways to go. But the good news is at the budget retreat in the spring, City Council said we do not have to have these funds raised in order to start construction. So the city is going to cash flow the project and we can continue to fundraise while the project is underway and even after it's complete. All right, so this is a drawing. It is not the drawing. It is just a kind of an example of what the new shelter could look like. But the top right is a future surgical suite. That is not included in the budget. It is kind of a long-term potential want, but it is not in the scope of what we would be looking at. So you can kind of get an idea. There's a lot more centralized space for staff to work with intake areas. We have a covered sally port here in the back. We have storage for equipment, a warehouse, and then dogs are on the top and the bottom there with different play yards for them to go to. So it's a lot more separation of the different populations of the animals so that we can control disease and keep them healthy. So in 2024 dollars, the estimate was 20.4 million. And we're looking at some value engineering work on like the type of building, whether it's like a tilt wall versus a brick. And Dawn's here, she can come up here and take over if you want. Or I can keep going, whichever you want. So, all right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so that was the scope of that study was really just to verify the programming, update the cost estimates because the last cost estimates were done in 2019 or 2017 probably. It was the earlier study But that was prior to the 2019 bond elections, so. Since then, what we've seen is we have increased our live release rates. Dogs are staying longer. We're also needing to accommodate the change in the animal housing standards. So we're looking to put in some more indoor kenneling. So like when we have isolation needs, we're able to do that. And we can say, you know, this is a URI isolation area. This is new intake isolation, and we're not cross-contaminating the animals. We're able to keep them separated. So it added 20 more housing units compared to the first study. And that is primarily due to allowing room for the build out as the city fully develops and due to the growth that we've had since the last study was done. And that what we've seen is we've struggled to have some dogs get adopted in the last few years. And so the dogs are staying longer. The staff is working really hard to get the long stay dogs adopted. They're really starting to push them and try to focus on getting those long stay dogs out. And that's it. So any questions on the bond outcome?
Does anyone have questions that they would like to ask at this time?
City council will canvass the election on Thursday. And so that's when the results will be final.
I have one or two, if no one else does. Would you care to comment on proposed location?
We looked at several locations. Right now, we don't have a finalized location. Like I said, the preferred site out of all of them that we looked at, the last round was the Imperial Park site, but the city council had us looking at a couple of other sites or even existing buildings, and I'm not sure what the outcome of that was. Dawn, do you have anything else on that?
Is a site acquisition in the?
We already
way
own,
that you've
we already
talked
own the
about?
site. We already own property.
Wow.
So there's no acquisition costs. There's site preparation costs that are included. There probably some drainage work, some additional parking, things like that, that will be needed. But that's one of the benefits of the sites that we looked at is that there's no land acquisition.
Okay, but location is not finalized and you're still looking at different places, but all of them are places that are already owned.
Yes.
I know the discussions of a regional approach to this have gone on. At this point, are they basically stopped?
That's not really part of this agenda item. This item is we're proceeding with building our own shelter. Any other discussions, regionalization are.
So they're basically terminated. Is there any discussion going on about sharing our new shelter with someone else? Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I also wanted to ask about the location, and I'm just trying to understand if we're to this point and getting close to the next point, why we haven't identified a spot or what, why are we continuing to discuss or what? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
We had, I mean, that was our preferred site. There are some discussions that need to occur with softball leagues before we move forward with that site or have any public, like, make any announcements of that of a final site, and it's kind of a sensitive topic for them. So we have some discussions that we need to have with them.
But you have enough faith or, you know, certainty in that site that the designs that you're gonna start doing would work there and you're not gonna be wasting time or money doing that when it's gonna turn out to be a different place.
The consultant was with us when we went on that tour, so she saw the site. The layout that I showed you will work on that site.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Yeah, it looks like we have finished the director's report, is that correct?
Yes. That was it.
If there's no other business to come before the meeting, I'll accept a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
I second.
All in favor?